Debbie Linsley was murdered in broad daylight on a suburban train journey to Victoria that took only 31 minutes. It was a case that made national headlines. Debbie was 26 years old and worked as a hotel receptionist in Edinburgh. She'd been visiting her parents to prepare for the wedding of her brother Gordon. Both he and her mother helped us by taking part in this reconstruction of the events on the day of the murder.
Debbie was looking very much forward to her brother's wedding. She was very excited about it. She was looking forward to being a bridesmaid. When she went for a fitting at the beginning of March with the other two bridesmaids, she looked lovely in it.
Debbie was staying with her family for 3 days after a hotel management course in London. It was a happy time for her. There was the wedding to look forward to, and the day she was leaving home, she had a rather special date in London, en route back to her job in Edinburgh.
She'd been on this course from her hotel. Somebody there, offered her a job, so she thought she would go and have a look around the hotel just to see what it was like. So on that morning, she'd got herself dressed up nicely, and she was going to have a look around. She had a few hours to spare.
At lunchtime on the 23rd of March, she watched Neighbours.
Look, do we have to watch this rubbish?
Oh, shut up, scumbag. It's nearly over.
Me? Look, if you want to lift to the station, we'll have to make a move soon.
Oh, all right then.
Debbie was security conscious. She carried a rape whistle on her keyring. At about 2 o'clock, Gordon dropped her off at Pettswood railway station. It's on the Orpington to Victoria line. There are no more sightings of her after this. Police know she bought a ticket at 2:04. Her train arrived at 2:18.
She would always be aware of the dangers when she was travelling. Even with me, we would always go into an open carriage rather than a closed one. She knew the dangers of that.
But Debbie was a smoker, and on this train, one of the few smoking areas was a single compartment, so she got in. It was at the front of the second carriage. She may have seen other female passengers in it, which made her feel safe, but at some point they may have got out. Police believe she smoked at least one cigarette, and almost certainly she started eating one of her sandwiches. At any rate, there's nothing to suggest that she was disturbed for the first part of her journey. Penge East is 5 stops from Victoria. The train arrived on time at 2:34. A witness remembers seeing a man hurriedly changing carriages.
Penge East. This is Penge East.
Another incident occurred after the train left Brixton. A French girl in the compartment next to Debbie's heard screams that lasted for about 2 minutes. She told the police she'd wanted to pull the communication cord, but was too shocked to move. When the train arrived at Victoria, the girls spotted a man with red hair walking away from near Debbie's compartment. She followed him. Eventually, she lost sight of him on the concourse. Meanwhile, the train was being checked for left luggage. Debbie had been savagely stabbed to death. There was no apparent motive for the attack. The ticket collectors at Victoria say 30 to 40 people got off that train, but so far only 26 have been accounted for. Police have now established that Debbie's attacker was injured in the struggle. A man with a cut face was seen walking away from platform 2 about 10 minutes after the train had pulled in. A little later that afternoon, in the gents' toilets at Victoria, another witness spotted a man cleaning a cut on his head. Thousands of people passed through Victoria Station that Wednesday afternoon. They could have been travelling to anywhere in the country or even abroad. Any one of them might help identify Debbie's murderer. Well, the officer in charge of the case is Detective Superintendent Alec Edwards. Now, can you just point out, we've got a model here of the train, where exactly did Debbie get on?
Yes, this is the front of the train, this is the second compartment, and this is the compartment that Debbie actually got into. Surprisingly, we haven't any witness who saw Debbie alive from the time she was dropped off by her brother until she was found dead some 30 minutes later.
And yet she was wearing very striking clothes, wasn't she?
Yes, she was. She's a good-looking girl. She was dressed in a blue jumper, blue skirt, very much like the colour you have on today,
right,
and with a black leather jacket over the top.
So you want anybody who saw her from that point?
Very much so.
Right. Well, let's move on to the man at Penge Station, seen changing carriages. What about him? You have a description of him, don't you?
Yes, I have. He's aged 30 years, stocky build, dirty blonde hair, scruffy, pale brown jacket. We urgently need to trace that person to eliminate him from the inquiry.
So he may not necessarily be the person you're looking for.
No, not at all. No,
right.
He may have other information for us.
Now, then we go on to Victoria Station, where there are 3 different sightings. The first one by the French girl who heard the awful screams. And do you have a description of the man she followed?
Yes. He's aged about 40, well-built, muscular rather than fat, reddish-brown hair, moustache which followed the contour of his lips, light windsheeter and grey trousers.
And what about the second sighting? Now, that's not the same description, the man with the scratch.
No, it's not the same sighting, and we do not think they are connected. But we would urgently wish to eliminate both men from the inquiry.
But would anybody come forward if they had a scratch and they were seen on that,
Possibly. On that day, we had an international football match at Wembley Stadium between England and Holland. We know that there were scuffles in the area. It may well have been he was involved in one of those scuffles and is just an innocent passerby.
What about the murder weapon?
It's described as possibly a good quality kitchen knife.
And that suggests that perhaps it was premeditated?
Yes, it's unlikely that anybody would find that in a carriage. That person had it with him when he left his home that day.
And finally, the one thing that's emerged is that there's probably a lot more people on that train who you haven't actually interviewed yet.
Yes, we've analysed the witnesses' statements. Now, we now believe that there are possibly up to 20 other persons we need to trace.
They must come forward, mustn't they?
Yes, we need the assistance of anyone who can help in this inquiry.
What about this motiveless murder? I mean, it was an awful story and it hit all the headlines. A lot of people have been upset by it.
Yeah. A very savage attack, made more disturbing by the fact that it was in the middle of the day in such a public place. We need to catch that person.
And an incentive, possibly over £35,000 reward, 30,000 reward for that, of any information. Here's the number if you want to call, 01 811 8055, or if you prefer, here's the direct